Well, hey, good evening, everybody. How are you? Good to see you. Good to be seen by you. Welcome to the live stream. I am your host, Bill Sylvie, and we are currently waiting on co host Kyle Schuant to join the stream and our guest, Servant of Shiloh, who will hopefully be hopping on board here real soon. But until then, you've just got me to entertain you. As you notice, I have moved the camera back to a reasonable position. I hope I'm not blurry on playback. I really do. I was confused and angry by all the blurriness, so I kind of screwed around a little bit with settings and hopefully got everything sorted. So anyway, I hope you guys are all doing well this evening. I'm sorry, getting bombarded with messages. That's how it is. That's how it goes sometimes when you're as popular as I am. And speaking of popular, heyo, good to see you, Imperial Ramblings. There's Kyle. He's out in the waiting room. What do you think, value viewers? Should we bring Kyle onto the stream? I think we're going to bring him onto the stream. Kyle, good evening. How the hell are you, my friend?
Good. How you doing, boys and girls?
Oh, I can't complain, but I could, but then who'd listen, right? Well, you would. You're my friend and everything. So as the screen goes dark and Kyle ghosts me on social media. But anyhow, no, I was just telling the folks the good news. Kyle, we are up to 987, I believe, 988. I'll need to look subs on the channel. You're going to have some classic Traveler and Conflict to DM real soon. So I hope you got some scenarios ready, my friend.
We're heading to Venus. It's the final countdown.
Yes. I hope they've seen us. So yeah, I am excited about this. I am totally on top. Let's check that live count, 988. We are 12 subs away, which is good because it was 987 earlier, and that's 13, and that's an unlucky number unless you're Bilbo Baggins, which I'm not. I eat like a hobbit, but you know.
How big was the Fellowship of the Ring? It was 14, wasn't it?
No, it was 9 because they matched the 9 riders, 9 heroes against 9 riders.
Yeah. Then it wasn't a very even match.
It was not well. I mean, it's like there's an old. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. I think I've linked you to some videos. There was a sketch comedy show, that Mitchell and Webb look, famous. Most people know it for the "Are we the baddies?" You know, the 2 SS officers in Russia.
Yeah.
But one of the lesser known skits, but it really speaks a lot to power imbalances in role-playing games, is was Angel Summoner and the BMX Bandit. Mm-hmm. And one of them plays a precocious kid with a BMX bike who, you know, breaks up little narcotics rings and solves mysteries and such. And the other is a named angel, like one of the named seraphim, who just summons the heavenly host every time there's a problem. And yeah, so there's kind of a, you know, sort of a D&D-esque power imbalance that can pop up like that sometimes. You know, you get the high level magic user, you know, the party's like, okay, all right, Bob's gonna go up there, he's got 2 arrows of troll slaying, and I'm going to lend him my ring of invisibility, and he's going to use his thief climb walls ability to get up on the shelf. Meanwhile, Mary and I are going to ready to charge with capital C before initiative. And then Steve, the magic user, is like, or just hear me out, I could lob a 10-die-6 fireball into the cave. Okay. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings, it was like...
Well, usually the players will choose the more intricate plan because that's more likely to go wrong.
Yes, they will. So in D&D, it kind of fixes itself. But in Lord of the Rings, you had Gandalf, who was effectively an angel, a really high-level fighter, a mid-level fighter, a couple of other mid-level fighters, and then literally 4 level 1 halflings. And then you had the ring wraiths, 9 unique undead with all the powers.
Yeah, but see, the players knew from the previous campaign that you could be the low-level guy and the GM would be soft on you. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to, like, sneak into the dragon's lair and, you know.
Yeah.
And the dragon will just talk to me for a bit.
Yeah, the 13 dwarf players are over there like, aren't you going to make like a move silently roll for him? Ah, well, he's a halfling and, he knows how to be quiet. Well, he's walking on coins and armor and piles of swords and gems.
Yeah, but the dragon knows where he is, but or vaguely where he is, but he just kind of indulges him.
Yeah,
exactly. That's just the GM being nice, if you ask me.
Yeah, yeah. And then you got Gary.
But I've got my ring of invisibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all you've got, man. Oh, no, I've got my +1 short sword.
Yes, +1 short sword of enemy detection. Yeah. Then you've got
you just
Gary.
Know that the player was going, maybe I could slay the dragon. And then he gets there and he sees how big it is. He's like, maybe not.
Gary played the wizard in the second campaign, and he died fighting that type 6 demon, then bitched and complained so much. He was like, fine, you wander out into the woods near the mountains, and you meet Alan, George, and Larry later. Well, hey, what about Barry? He pissed me off. I killed his character. I just kept sending orcs at him until he died.
So this is a good time to mention that great old webcomic, DM of the Rings.
Yes.
Where the guy takes screen caps from the Lord of the Rings movies and just attaches little speech bubbles to them. So it starts off, and then the player's going, holy epic backstory, Batman. The GM's reading his reams stuff all there, and the players aren't listening. And every town they go to, where's the tavern? Why can't I buy another sword, a different sword? Oh, but, there's epic ballads.
Now, I will tell you, Professor Tolkien apparently didn't give a fig about economics. But I remember, like, Gandalf's big reward to Barlaman when they got, I think it's when they got back to Bree, when they destroyed the ring, and Frodo and Gandalf are on their way back to the Shire, was a gold piece. And like, he was just freaked out about it. He was, I don't believe a gold piece, 1 GP. Imagine that. Unless Barlaman was like, on the download being super sarcastic. Oh, a whole gold piece. Wow. Really? That's amazing. No, honestly, there were just 4 level draining wraiths sneaking around the town for like months. Half orc assassins, but no, a gold piece should cover it. Yeah, this is yeah. And you're an angel, you say. All the powers of the Undying Lands, and a gold piece is okay. Sure. Thanks. Yeah, no, stop in anytime. It's great. It'll be fine. A new king in the south. Well, I certainly won't have to worry about a lot of taxes now, will I?
Yeah, but Tolkien definitely didn't do his economics. His players would have been very upset about him.
And good, by the way. I George R.R. Martin bitching about, I want to know what Aragorn's tax plan is. Nobody cares, you fat, overrated dolt. Nobody. You know why?
When did George R.R. Martin say that?
Yeah. Yes, he actually said that.
Yeah, but when was that? Was like
that was just a few. That was just a few years ago.
Why do you need to know his tax plan? You don't get to vote for who your king's going to be. Anyway,
you don't vote for king. But yeah, no, I mean, like, honestly, George, I read the Lord of the Rings to be enthralled, to escape the mendacity and boring Monday. If Tolkien had said, now we're going to stop and talk about Bilbo's great tax filling out, chapters 1 through 7, because he brought a lot of treasure back from the Lonely Mountain. And
well, isn't that what the Silmarillion is about, really? Like, you get 10 pages in, and when people have stopped reading, it starts talking about economics of the fantasy world.
No, that is not what the Silmarillion is about.
Because nobody would know.
I know. One night, when we don't have a guest lined up, I'm going to sit and I'm going to break your brain open with everything I know about the Silmarillion, and you won't be able to prove whether or not.
Maybe you could do a run through of the Silmarillion. You could talk about it.
Maybe I might do that if our audience would like me to talk Silmarillion to them.
Economics.
Silmarillion economics. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells. They made them at a rate of 13.5% APR annually. Accounting for inflation, this meant that they were deeply in debt to the men of Dale.
Carried through to the present day, the entire planet Earth is gold.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What is it? It's like people talk about you should be able to break the economy of any world just by doing, this one like low level AD&D magic user trick. You should, like, come on, man. I get it that keep track of time. Yes, the burgers or syndics or lords or whoever runs a town are going to want to cut of the taxes, but when you start getting into, technically create food and water should completely wipe out the farming industry, even in low level. I'm just like, come on.
Oh no. You used to get the same one about cure disease.
Yeah.
Cure disease and cure light wounds and everything. Doesn't everyone live to 120? And as I've discussed before, the guys on the Traveller forums and on the old Traveller mailing list, they get right into that with saying, when you factor it in and the chances and everything, the average trading ship will actually be losing money and stuff. And I think number one, that's delving too deep into all the probabilities. It's delving deeper than was ever intended by the game writers. They didn't intend it to hold up to that close a scrutiny, because it was just meant to be a spark for adventure. But even if on average you do lose money, that's fine, because that encourages you to take that clueless young farm boy and the mysterious old guy, even though they want to avoid imperial entanglements. And last time you ended up in massive debt to this space slug because you had imperial entanglements. But you will risk it again because you need the money.
Because you need the money. And it's going to take, at a minimum 17 to get you out of hock with a space slug.
Yeah.
Which you've been guaranteed by the old man. Because he's fronting 2,000 right then. And 15 when you get to Alderaan. So, but I mean, that's going to work out, because what are the odds Alderaan's not going to be there when we get there, right? Oops. Hello, Damien. Good to see you. Good to see you, my friend. But yeah,
can you rename streams? Probably not in the middle of the stream.
Yeah, no, that would, let me see. General. No, I cannot.
Once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I was going to, since it looks like our special guest is being a typical gamer and doing a no-show on us. Typical gamer. I thought we'd talk about something else, but whatever. You can go and rename it later, can't you?
I can come
You
back
can
in.
rename it later, and then I'll save the because I was going to do the next week. I was going to do the Runequest, but I'll do that next week because as well as being properly prepared, I need to have the PDFs. So the PDFs for Runequest are available at Drive-Thru RPG, and I was going to do the usual thing when we go do a walkthrough the game system, where we have a screen with the PDFs up on it, and people can look at it while we talk about it and talk through it. Because otherwise, it's me sitting here reading a book and then talking about it, and it's not that exciting for you guys. There's all Runequest, and then there's the deluxe box set, and we'll talk about those next week. The old rules and the deluxe box set. It's essentially the same rules, much closer to each other than, for example, old D&D and advanced D&D. But it's essentially the same, and anyone who's done Call of Cthulhu and things like that will, they'll see the bones in there. They'll see the same thing in there. All they really did with Call of Cthulhu was take away the hit locations because it doesn't have the same emphasis on combat that Runequest does. But we'll talk about that next week. And this week gets to be random blather since we don't have our third.
Unless he was delayed. I mean, if he pops on, we can jump right in.
Yeah, but he better have brought pizza.
Exactly. This late, he better have brought pizza. TCPI pizza. A slice over standard 8-bit octal is how I'll take mine. Years ago, I can't believe I think of 2013 as being years ago, but it really was. My buddy Eric, who worked in the simulator business. He wrote MechWarrior 2, as I mentioned to you and on the stream before, but he was looking at getting back into aerospace, and there's a lot of it here in Central Florida.
Yeah,
and he was thinking about coming and checking out the job market for a few weeks. He's out of Utah, so I said to him, "If you come down here," because he played D&D with us every Sunday over was it Skype? I think we did it. But anyway, he the plan was for like half the game he'd sit off in the back of the house where nobody could see him, and eventually, at our usual break for snacks and stuff, I just lean over, and the hutch that my monitor sat on at the time, because it was a glass tube monitor, I just have like a cloth hanging under it, and I just reach under and just like put a slice of pizza under there, and he'd take it, and it didn't work out, but it was
who was it we were talking about? Who it was like just the DM was in another room or something, or behind not just a DM screen, but a cubicle.
Oh, that was a rule that Gary toyed with, was that the DM would basically be a voice from beyond. Like that was literally like, okay, we're going to put this in the beta rules. So the players never see the DM. The DM is literally just like a voice of God. And he moved like some filing cabinets around.
You're the Wizard of Oz.
Exactly. He moved filing cabinets around and ran games from over there. But I guess it didn't work out because that's not in any of the D&D rule books, that you're
just shouting behind your filing cabinets.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, we're all at an age now, at least us older gamers, where we've kind of got 10 ears and everything that could just turn into.
Well, the players would be talking amongst themselves at the game table. It would be very hard to get their attention. You'd have to, pop your head up. It's like, guys, fellas, listen, pay attention. Oh, good. Well, it's probably it was probably a development of, because that used to be done with a lot of war games. I believe when the military does its high level war games, they do similar things. The opposing teams are in different rooms, and there's referees just coming back and forth and going, "Okay, this is what you see."
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that could certainly be the case. As I know, like even you know, there's war games that to add to the randomness, the elasticity, that sort of thing. Like, oh, what was it in Chainmail? I don't know if you caught the episode where Paul and I played Chainmail over video chat. We had hello, Michael Connor, unbreaded, my friend. But we weren't using rulers for magic spells, and you don't. You literally have to estimate where your magic spell is going to hit. So I was casting lightning bolt, and I was saying, okay, I think that's 16 inches. And so he'd say, okay, so it's going to land here. He put a marker and then measure out. Well, no, 16 inches was too far. Okay, I think it's 13 inches. Well, 13 inches is too short. I think it's 14 inches. 14 inches is just a little over. I think it's 13 and a half inches. Hit. Michael Connor says, and this is sound advice here. DMs, if we didn't pay attention to my old GM, he would assume we were bored. It would then go very bad for characters. This is my kind of DM, ruthless and inventive.
Yeah, that works. That works. My old thing is, you go around the table asking them what they're doing, and if they're like, "Huh, what?" because they were busy doing something else, you just say, "Okay, you spend your round D&D dithering and ducking." Okay, next.
The only time in a game I have ever just like, and it wasn't even so, it was deliberate dithering and ducking on my part. I was playing, I love saying this. So there I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax, but I was playing a magic user and I had nothing to do in a given round. We were in a 10-foot wide hallway that was very long, and I wasn't about to start lobbing, weapons of mass destruction into the front melee. And so I, Gary's going around the table, and he comes to me, and I was wearing one of my wizard's hat, my purple crushed wizard's hat, and he says, "You in the hat, what do you do?" I said, look at my sheet, look back at him. "I endeavor to persevere." Without missing a beat, Gary grabs a couple of dice and goes, "You succeed." So I literally, I was just like, okay. Just sat back there. And then we got massacred with, like, we got wiped out by some Duragar, the gray dwarves, and who were working with salamanders. This was on level 1 of Castle Greyhawk. So I just want to point out, any of my players on the Monday night or Tuesday night live stream game who bitch about my level 1 Castle Greyhawk being dangerous, yeah, let me tell you about
he probably rolled it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Either that or the previous part of your adventurers had been through there, and they were fleeing out of a lower level of the dungeon and got pursued. And so those guys were just sitting around waiting.
Oh, one of the
adventurers that came in. Well, let's not wait till they come down to the 4th level. Let's just sit up here. And all the kobolds and things in level 1 just see the Duragar and that scatter away.
There was just a brutally hard computer role-playing game, and they all were. Back in the day, computer role-playing games were pretty unforgiving. Wizardry was nice about that, because Wizardry from Surtech was a persistent dungeon. Like, if there was a TPK, it would write to the disk the location of your party's bodies. You could create a new party and go down and loot their bodies to get their treasure. The big thing in wizardry was sometimes we would do rescue parties. It's like, oh, but I loved that fighter and that magic user, and they had cool magical loot, and they died down on the 7th level. I'll scrape together a rescue party, and we'll get. And by the time we get to them, I'm like, actually, these guys are a lot better, so we're just going to leave your corpses here. Sorry, and take all the gear, and sometimes it wasn't even and take all the gear because we got better stuff on our way to get their bodies. But no, I was playing Dungeon Master. That was actually the name of the game, from FTL Software. And I did that thing, that dangerous thing. And DMs, if a party does this, 99 groups of 99 berserkers, Michael knows what time it is. If a party, in this, I'm going to spoiler a little bit. Spoiler alert for my Castle Greyhawk mega dungeon. There is an elevator that will take you from the top level all the way to the bottommost level. If the party takes it, and they take it all like a first level party, they can walk into the ruins of Castle Greyhawk, not the ruins of Castle Greyhawk, the module, but walk into Castle Greyhawk, find the elevator, push the button, go all the way to the bottom. And they're there at the bottom. I mean, that can happen. Well, I was playing Dungeon Master, and it wasn't an elevator, but with my first level part, I don't even think it was a party. I think the joke was that I just made one character because I didn't realize you built a whole party for the game. So one character, and I go into the dungeon and I start going downstairs, running away from encounters. I get all the way to the bottom. Well, I get very deep down. I recall it was like level 8 or level 9. And wander around. And I keep seeing monsters that are just abominably powerful. So I run back up the stairs. And, it's an old game. So it's like, arrow forward moves you 1 10 by 10 square forward. Next arrow. And I'm going, and I'm going, and I'm going. And I'm never stopping. I'm just like, okay, I got to get to the little area outside the dungeon and think about what I've done and think about playing the game right. I get all the way to the top and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to turn around. And I turn around and there's that game's equivalent of a Balrog has followed me all the way up the stairs and was literally 1 step behind me the whole time. So I turn around. It's like, demon hits you for 66 hit points. Demon hits you for 66 hit points. You have died. So yeah, Dungeon Master was a pretty unbalanced and brutal CRPG, and as they all were back in the day. Now I like Skyrim and I like Fallout 4, but man, they they do make it pretty easy on you. You had to quit wizardry to save. It was the Dark Souls of early CRPGs. You had to quit to save the game.
Well, I mentioned in the Discord there's a fun little one called what's it called? Sword and Glory, and it's just a phone app. By If Else Media, and where do I haven't played it for a little bit, but it's just like little black and white thing like that. It doesn't look very super. So look up If Else Media, Sword and Glory, and basically your little. It's like a Viking world, and you choose if you're going to be Christian or pagan, or they call it worldly, where you don't really believe in anything. And you choose what clan you're from, the bear clan, the elk clan, or someone. It gives you little advantages and disadvantages. And then there's your little choose your own adventure or fighting fantasy style of thing, where they give you this paragraph of text and then ask you what you want to do. And what you want to do will almost always end up leading you to fight somebody. And you fight, and when you fight them, if you die, you die. That's it. you start the game again. And so their basic premise is you are going to die. The question is how far you're going to go before. How much glory and wealth will you accumulate before you do so?
Yes.
But you're going to die. So it's a fun little thing, and they've got a little village that you interact with. Like you go and talk to your mother, and she tells you that some guys have been harassing your sister. So you go and talk to your sister, and she says, "Yeah, it's that guy over there." And you go and you tell him to piss off, and he says no, and so he fights you, and so on. So some guys are obviously going to be lower level, lower power than you, but some guys will be equal to you. But even if they're lower level, lower power, they can still knock you out, because the basic combat system is a sort of a rock, paper, scissors thing. I can't remember it all, but it's like fast attack, strong attack, and a defense kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the one beats the other. So there's only three things, but one beats the other. It's just that when you get bonuses, you get a bit better at doing those things. So the win, it's not a single hit and you're down, but the win has a greater effect because of your bonuses. Or the defense, the win in that little interaction of rock, paper, scissors has a better effect. And it's just black and white and a little bit of text and everything, and it's a fun little thing.
Well, that seems like a lot of fun. I would definitely check that out. The first mobile game that I had on a phone that I owned was actually I had a little Kyocera knockoff of the Nokia phone. The phone you can drive nails with, and it had a roguelike on it, and it was fairly unremarkable. Except that I died 9 times before I got off the first level. And the 10th character, it was like, strength, quickness, hit points, and armor, and all of it was randomly generated. My 10th character lived, and I played that character. I just kept going down dungeon levels and fighting ampersands and little stick men and everything else, just going and going and going and going. And I remember one of the it was fairly mundane. It was like, a club with a spike through it, a rusty half broken sword, a semi decent sword, just on and on and on. Just kept building up on some similar tropes. But it did have one very funny thing, and that was there was an item you could find, and it was a very stale pizza, and you could either use it as a shield. It was like, you could hit the asterisk button to equip it, or hit the 1 button to eat it. You could get hit points back from it, or you could use it as armor. It was the only notable thing, and I always thought that was super fun that the programmers put that in there. That was pretty cool. But yeah, it was just a very simple little roguelike, and it was something to do sitting in the doctor's office waiting room. You know how it is when you got little ones. It's like you end up going to the doctor like, every 5.5 weeks there's sniffles or something. So I got that character up to insane levels and got down to like some triple digits of the dungeon before I lost interest and stopped playing it, or I switched phones or something. So,
well, there was a browser one. I think it was at Blog of Holding, but it seems to have disappeared looking now, called Dungeon Robber, where it used the dungeon generation system in the back of the dungeon.
I remember that one. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And you started as a 0 level guy, and you had just a chair leg.
Yes.
as a club, that's all you had.
And
everything else you got,
you'd see all the text fly by as it was rolling through all the charts to find out what kind of a room or a hallway you were in.
Yeah.
That was Dungeon Robber was a lot of fun. I actually liked it.
I guess we could message the guy at Blog of Holding, but he's still got a PDF. associated with it. Yeah, so you can look up Dungeon Robber, yeah. But you just start with like 3 hit points and a chair leg. That's a club.
And I know how you DM. I'm sure you'd think that was actually kind of a feat.
Oh, yeah,
chair leg? My players start with a handful of sand. Chair leg. Maybe a 10th level fighter, Lord.
No, I'm sure they could find a chair leg from somewhere.
Yeah. You know, that was always one of the things that like killed me about Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, at least first edition, was see, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is the game where your players think they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, but you know they're playing Call of Cthulhu. And it's like, you know, D&D. Now, granted, you can catch diseases and become very ill and possibly even die in Dungeons and Dragons, but it's kind of a low chance, you know. And in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, it's like, yeah, okay, you're jumped by 3 ruffians in an alley. One of them has a hand weapon. All right, well, you know, we fight him. Well, 2 of you die in the process. One of you goes insane from all the blood and guts everywhere, and they have to haul him off to an insane asylum. You live, but you got scratched on the arm, so 6 weeks later you die of typhus. It's not a game of acquiring huge piles of treasure and living vicarious, glorious fantasy.
Yeah, it looks like Dungeon Robber doesn't work anymore because it was based on Adobe Flash.
Oh,
so
that sucks.
I could understand they, no longer supported it, but they didn't have to like cut it off to everyone who already had it. That was a bit rough.
I know. Hey, Blog of Holding guy, if you're ever watching this, write that sucker in Python so we can play it again, or some visual language. Dungeon Robber was dumb fun. How about you, audience? Have you guys ever? What are some favorite D&D-ish Flash games that you guys have tried out? I was quite pleased to find out that Dark Tower, if you remember that old chestnut, was that a thing down in Australia? Did it make it down there before it? Okay. Dark Tower and the Mattel Dungeons and Dragons Electronic Labyrinth game. That is a mouthful. I've done the Electronic Labyrinth game, featured it on the show before, which is a very ornate and kind of involved board game, because you have to memorize sounds. It's like, and this thing has a piezoelectric noisemaker in it. It's not like, oh, that's a creaking door opening, that's wind blowing, oh, that's a heartbeat. It's like, is it beep 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 or beep beep beep? That means that the dragon is 1 square away. But there are versions of those you can play online, and I hope they're not Flash also. Let's see. Let's play. Play Dark Tower online. That's from 2017. Yeah, there it's on Steam. Oh my God, you have to get Tabletop Simulator for that. That's not. Let's see, an Android version. No, there was a version you could actually just play in your browser, and it was probably with Flash, to be honest. But I know the Play Dark Tower. Nope, that is something completely different. And I probably have Chinese spyware on my computer now for clicking it. But anyway, yeah, you can seek those out. You can seek those out and play them. And of course, there's a if you want to play the old Wizardry games, there are a few websites that have retro emulators built into the website, and you can load up disk images. Like there's an Apple II emulator that runs in the browser. You have to download a plugin to get it to work, but you can actually play Wizardry and the gold box games. You can play all of those. The only warning, the only admonition I would give anyone who wants to try those is they run, because they run in emulators. I don't know about like how well they do, how robust their saving system is. Does it actually write a game save to a virtual disk? So, you could sit there on a Sunday and play for hours and be, oh, this is a lot of fun. I'm going to pick this up next weekend or something. And then you navigate away to order a pizza or, check on your Amazon order, and you come back and, hail and well met, adventurer, start thy new character.
You must just sit there and play forever.
Yeah. And let me tell you something about emulation too. If there's one thing I can tell you, hands down, if you're gonna, nostalgia only carries one so far.
Yeah.
I can play the gold box games, I can play Wizardry, I can play a whole lot of either emulated games or just old games that they've managed to get to run in Windows and enjoy the hell out of them. But if something happens to my save game or Windows crashes and I have to reinstall it, that tends to be it. Like, I don't go back. That is a momentary rush. It's kind of like, I mean, I don't know, Kyle, if you hit yard sales or thrift stores a lot, but remember that brief period in the mid 20 teens when every guy like slightly older than us was brewing their own beer at home beer brewing kits.
Oh, the younger ones too. Here is like a massive hipster thing.
Yeah.
All the guys with the ironic beards.
Yeah.
And the cardigans and wearing the cardigans and sometimes corduroy pants as well, were brewing their craft beers.
Yeah, guys making their own strawberry beers and their own lagers and everything like that. And it lasted for about 15 months. And then all of that shit just went into a corner of the garage, up in the attic, and then eventually out to the yard.
Well, I think for a lot of families, it became the substitute gift, So you used to get ties and socks.
Yeah.
When you were the older male in the household. And then it became, oh, well, Dad likes beer or hubby likes beer or whatever. Let's get him the brewing kit. So he stuck it in the corner of the garage and, it generated more dust than it did beer. So
yeah. Maybe he made a pitch or two. Now, my father-in-law got this. My mother-in-law got him a home brewing kit, and he made some lagers, and it was, for what it was pretty darn tasty, but he never did it again. And the last time I was over there, I was taking something out to the recycling and sitting on a table off in one corner of the garage, though, in the box, the whole thing just set aside.
I have once in my life brewed alcohol, on one occasion only. Well, okay, not count. There's some accidental occasions in which I brewed alcohol.
I love how the qualifiers begin coming almost immediately.
Well, if you get a tomato sauce bottle or ketchup, as you guys call it, and you open it and you use it, and then you leave it in the cupboard for long enough, it will eventually.
Sure. You got a bottle of ketchup lager. I get it.
Yeah, eventually. It's got quite a bit of a tang to it. But the one time I deliberately made alcohol, as me and a friend, I was in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And it was a funny thing about kiwi fruit. Here in Australia, they're always kind of a delicacy, and they sell for 50 cents or $1 each. So you don't go and buy a 10-pound bag of them, whatever. But in New Zealand, what happened, or used to happen anyway, was that one year there'd be all these enormous prices for kiwi fruit. Mm-hmm. So all these farmers would just wow, this is great. So next year I'm gonna clean up, and they plant kiwi fruit, because it's not like walnuts or something where the damn tree takes 10 years to grow. so that there's a relatively stable price. So the kiwi fruit, Chinese gooseberries, you could just grow it in a year. So they plant all these kiwi fruit, and then the next year the price would crash. It'd be massive. The price would crash. So then this is taking up too much space. I could graze sheep here or something, and they'd tear them all out. And the next year the price would jump right up again. So it was just boom, boom, boom like that. And the kiwi fruit were 10 cents a kilo.
Good Lord.
So we went and we got about 10 kilograms of kiwi fruit, and we realized this is more than we can eat before they turn rotten. And then we said, hang on, turning rotten, like fermenting?
Oh no.
So we got all these old milk jugs, plastic milk jugs, washed them out really carefully, and then we put brewer's yeast inside each of the milk jugs with all the pulped up kiwi fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put it in the bathroom in the bath. We never had baths. We had showers, and it was a separate shower. And then we went and checked on it a couple of days later, and the plastic milk jugs were kind of bloated up.
You got to leave the lids off, Kyle. Cover them with cloths, buddy.
And then we opened the lid, and this big jet of kiwi fruit pulp goes whoosh across the bathroom, confirming our decision to put it in the tiled area where we could hose it down later. Yeah, goes. So then we figured out to open it up a couple of times a day and let the pressure out. We should have just put a pinhole in there, but anyway, so we did that. And then we let it all settle down, and then we had the taste testing, and it was actually surprising, not awful. It was a horrible color. It was this sort of greeny brown swamp water color. But it made a froth on the top, and it was like a fruity lager. It was surprisingly not awful, but we didn't repeat the experiment.
Yeah, no, I get you. That is the one I've cooked and baked and barbecued and everything under the sun, as far as staple stuff goes, right? And although I've never baked a loaf of bread, I think that's on my to-do list is to bake a loaf of bread. But I can honestly say that I have not brewed anything in my life on purpose. As you say, there's a qualifier there, on purpose. I have probably accidentally come close to making potato vodka. I remember
that's a bad stench when the potatoes go bad in that
Jesus, yes, it is. I'll tell you a funny potato story. When I first moved in with funny potato story. When I first moved in with the wonderful woman who is now my wife, she was my roommate at the time, and her roommate Andrea was my other roommate. So it was three's company. I slept on the couch for the princely sum of $100 a month. And because I showed up with the then gargantuan 19-inch color television, Laserdisc player, VCR, and monster stereo, it worked out. But we were getting ready to move out, to go our separate ways. Colleen and I had become an item. Andrea wanted to move on for whatever the situation was. And there was this very kind of fancy little like Japanese cabinet that was standing in one corner of the kitchen. And I had never wondered what it was. My food was cereal, milk, lunch meat, bread, peanut butter, 20-something guy who sleeps on the couch food. So we're cleaning up and we're getting ready. And I opened this thing up, and it was like something out of a horror movie, because all of these vines Vines, Kyle, vines just push their way out. And at the nexus of this, there's one of those plastic shopping bags, and it's just got vines coming through it. It's like the art for the yellow musk creeper in the Fiend Folio. If there'd been a skull sitting there with the vines sort of going through it and everything, I wouldn't have been surprised.
You would have screamed and you'd still be running.
Yeah, exactly. To this day, 27 years on, I would still be running up the street. But Colleen's like, what is that? I was like, I have never touched this. I've never put. And we called Andrea. It's like, hey, check this out. And she looks at it and she goes, oh, that's where the potatoes were. She had brought home potatoes, put them in that cabinet, and they sat there. They didn't rot. They grew. And when we opened those little cabinet doors, it was spring. And they come out, and it was just, oh my gosh. So thank God it was not that we didn't, make penicillin or something.
But does your RPG have rules for that? That's the important question.
Does your RPG have rules for making penicillin? I mean, at that point,
well, or potato monsters.
Well, I think it's incumbent on every DM possible to scrape stuff up to use for, to create monsters out of it. Like, oh man, I forgot I left those towels laying in the washer. There's a monster idea. Clothes golem. Let me just write that down.
Or the cabinet vine.
The cabinet vine. God, it was like a party favor.
It entangles you.
Yeah. Drags you down, something horrible like that, some body horror thing. Gary told a story about making dandelion wine when he was a kid in Lake Geneva. And they had forgotten about it. They got a bunch of bottles from a lady and said, hey, can we pick all the dandelions? And she was like, oh, of course. So they made dandelion wine and then set the bottles. They were fermented. Wine is fermented, right? Yeah, it's fermented. They put the bottles, the jugs they were fermenting with under this lady's stairs and went back later, and they were just like, oh my God, it was the most awful stuff. It was like unpalatable. My neighbor for New Year's brought me a bottle of rum punch. And Joe is a great guy. He's a fantastic dude. Just a really upstanding guy. But he brought me some. He said, hey, Bill, I got you some rum punch. It's got fruit in it. I was like, oh, man, rum punch with fruit in it. That's going to be good. That's going to be great. And he goes, and about a third of the bottle is Puerto Rican moonshine. It's like, God bless you, Joe. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much. Because I make them cheesecakes. I make he and his wife cheesecakes for the holidays. And I had an obligatory glass. It was, those whitening strips that people waste their money on to just strip everything off their teeth? Joe's rum punch would have done it. I mean, I had a sip, I drank it, I set it down, and I could still feel fumes like making my eyes water. And I said, you know what? I'd rather not go blind for my New Year's resolution was not drink until the visual cortex in my brain is poisoned and stops functioning. So I had a glass or two at New Year's, and I thanked him heartily. It was a well-meant gift, and they're lovely people, but dear God. I was a little concerned because there are some caustic substances that will eat through glass. Like, doesn't that just blow your mind? There are acids that work on silicas. You can't put them in glass. You have to put them in plastic. It's like that scene. Yeah, you guys are all familiar with Breaking Bad. Look, if there's anybody out there, and I'm about to spoil Breaking Bad for you, as much as I don't want folks to log off, one, it's the most popular TV show ever, and it was on 12 years ago, is 2.
Yeah.
So Get Out. But the scene when Walter and Jesse kill one of the low-level meth dealers and dispose of his body in the upstairs bathtub, and it's Jesse's fault because Walter sends him to a home store and says, all right, you're looking for a plastic tub with the letters HDPE on it. It has to be HDPE. And he's walking along, pushing the cart, and he's like, he's looking at these things. He's like, and he's hung up the phone already. It's like HB, This is stupid. None of this stuff's going to hold back acid. And so he goes home, dumps the guy in the bathtub, pours all the acid on him there, and he's standing there smiling, looking all triumphant, goes downstairs. Walt comes in. He's like, yeah, I took care of him. Yours is still downstairs. That drug dealer was still alive, and they were trying to figure out what to do with him. And he's like, but no, I took care of it. And he's like, well, did you get the right container? And he's like, yo, Mr. White, acid's not going to stop for some plastic container. He's dissolving up in the bathtub. And right then the entire bottom of the bathroom collapses in front of them. So, fortunately,
I think they did that on Mythbusters.
I'm sorry, they did do it on Mythbusters?
Yeah, I think they did it on Mythbusters and decided that it wouldn't have gone through or something like that. Mythbusters, it's usually a bit anticlimactic. They discover it's not as exciting or dramatic or as explosive as you hoped.
Well, here's the thing too, and I actually said this. I posted this, and of course I got dogpiled, but I posted this years ago, like on the Discovery Channel, on their comments under videos, because it was Shark Week, and they wanted to bust all the myths in Jaws.
Yeah.
Could a shark tear a dock apart? Could a shark sink a fishing boat? Could a shark, this, that, and the other. And the last one, the big one, because they have to end the show by blowing stuff up, is could you shoot a tank, an O2 tank, and cause an explosion and blow up a shark? And they said, myth busted. No, you can't. I live here in Florida. Diving is like the 4th most popular sport here in Florida, scuba diving. And it's gotten better over the years as construction methods and so on have gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a period in the 70s and 80s, you'd hear about a diving tank exploding. I don't mean exploding like the regulator blows off and damages or kills somebody. I mean goes off like a bomb. And it's usually from just a slight bump or something. So I posted up all the links from like St. Petersburg Time, the Miami Herald, stuff like that. I'm like, they explode. They do explode. And right here is, and of course the fans just dogpiled. They're like, oh, that's not true. It was, and I'm like, because I didn't say that like Jamie Heineman like killed a guy in a bar fight or something. I just said that they got this one wrong. You can cause a diving tank to explode.
Yeah.
So if you want to kill a giant shark, valued viewers, first, stuff a diving tank halfway into its mouth so it's sticking out like a stogie. Second of all, be on a sinking fishing boat. Thirdly, have an M1 Garand. Fourthly, be a real good shot and say, smile, you son of a bitch. And you should be golden. Of course, you guys down there in Australia, y'all are just pretty much ringed like Indians riding around cowboy circled wagons by great white sharks, aren't you?
Yeah, we are, but it's an unusual occurrence, and we have an absurd amount of prevention of it. I mean, the most popular beaches actually have aircraft flying over and watching out for the sharks, because the danger area apparently is the shallows. So, when people are out swimming in water that's 300 fathoms deep or whatever, they don't tend to get grabbed. It's in the shallow ones. because that's where the sharks mistake you. Because the sharks don't actually want to eat people; they want to eat fish, so they mistake the flailing limbs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lying on a surfboard, which is a relatively diamond-shaped thing, and splashing your arms, a shark coming up underneath you is like, I'm going to eat that tuna, and I will live like a king.
Yeah, because the sharks aren't that smart. So so it tends to be in the shallower waters where it happens. But this is also where, if you're aerial, you can see the thing moving around. You know. So they have light aircraft and helicopters go up and have a look around at the most popular beaches at the most popular times. So really, when you think about it, they're spending this much money to save this many lives. Really, it's objectively speaking, you'd spend your money differently. But then again, they're also thinking of spending that much money to save this much money because it's, as was so well demonstrated in the original film, it's not good for the tourism in the area if a shark takes something. Even though statistically, more people are going to die on the way driving to the holiday town, on the roads, than get grabbed by the shark.
Cows will cause more deaths in the United States if we start, say, at July 1st, the start of high summer, and go all the way to the end of the year. Cows, bovines, will cause more deaths than sharks will in the United States, probably in Australia too.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
But Stephen Benchley, I bet correctly that a book about, a small farm town landlocked being stalked by cows wouldn't be nearly as exciting. Hello, Mobius.
Yeah, cannibal cows. Well, that could be the bad side effect of mad cow disease. After feeding them ground up downer cattle for a decade or two, cattle have got an appetite for meat. And they start attacking. So not that many people got taken by sharks and stuff. It's your spiders and snakes and so on that tend to be more deadly, and the blue-ringed octopus. Lots more people get killed by the blue-ringed octopus than by sharks. It's very poisonous.
So you've got spiders, scorpions, blue-ringed octopus, box jellyfish. What is the saying in Australia? Legs of many, you're fucked, mate. I think.
It's pretty nasty. We've got quite a wandering monster table.
Yeah,
and none of them worth much XP either. So.
Yeah, that's the hell of it. Is some of the worst ones aren't. I threw some rot grubs as a party favor at the Tuesday night group. I don't know if you caught that. And I think the whole haul of them is like 33 experience points.
Oh, the earworm is the nasty one, the one that lurks in the door for when they listen at doors.
Oh, the ear seeker. Look, hello, Chip Schultz. Greetings. I have sworn. Look, I get it that there are things that players did that drove Gary up the wall. And there are things to I am inventing this exact scenario because my son sitting across the table from me has annoyed me for the last time. Types of monsters in D&D. I am not putting those in my game, and that includes the ear seeker. I'm sorry. I look, I get it. They slowed your games down back in 1974, Gary. There's challenging monster, and then there's just
Well, guess what? I have put them in my games.
Why does that not say? Well, you're from Australia. Of course you have. That's small potatoes to you. It always comes back to potatoes. That's small potatoes to you. It's like ear seekers.
Well, mainly because it's funny.
It is funny. I think there's enough funny with the rock grubs. So the scenario was the party, for those of you who missed the D&D live stream, the party opened a door, and of course, they didn't bother to check for traps. So or maybe they did, but their thief is too low level to have picked it up. But they open the door and it pulls a string and it causes a crossbow to fire and it hits somebody. And, it hit the dwarf and he made a saving throw versus poison, thank goodness. But they go over and they're like, well, we're just going to take this crossbow is what we're going to do. We'll teach these orcs. So I said, well, the crossbow's been, kind of nailed to a little wood stand and it's on top of the barrel. So, like, so what? I'm picking it up. I said, well, like a handle, it pulls off the top of the barrel. And nailed to the bottom inside of the barrel lid are strings. Hanging from the strings are gobbets of meat. Crawling around in the gobbets of meat are rot grubs. And they see your warm ass. they see your juicy, adventurous butt and leap off onto you. So it was immediately torches, and the 12 hit point having character suddenly had no hit points because they stabbing him with their torches, trying to kill off all the rock grubs before they doodled into his heart. But rock grubs were funny.
They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. Eh?
They did stab it with their steely knives, and they stabbed it with their burning torches, and they just couldn't kill the beast. So yeah, there's all kinds of critters in D&D. We were talking about this the other night, and I don't know if you saw. I printed up some classic D&D monsters. I got my resin printer going, and I got the old I got the old Rust Monster printed up, the classic Rust Monster, aka the Chinese monster. Is Gary found the bag of dinosaurs. I can make monsters out of these, and it was brilliant. I mean, we talk about taking inspiration for your D&D games from anywhere, but really that's how you should do it. The master taught us. If your kid is like, Dad, I want an action figure, and drags you down the action figure aisle, and you see something that looks like it wouldn't be completely jank on your map board, buy it. Yep.
Agreed.
There's a I've gone blank. I've forgotten the gentleman's website, but he does like it's Black Magic Tabletop Creations, and he raids the Dollar Tree toy aisle all the time, and it's like I bought a can of black craft brush on craft paint and some blue and these rubbery action figures, and I'm going to show you how to make storm giants out of them. And he grabs a pair of kitchen scissors and hacks on them, and just slops paint on them and does like a quick shade and fairly convincing storm giants.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be so inspired to improvise everywhere along the way, in my opinion. What's the hackiest thing you've done, Kyle? Just like the most off the cuff. You see, not even necessarily with miniatures, just like the most inspired moment as a game master by just something random from around wherever.
That was the Ape Cult.
The Ape Cult is a darn good one. I gotta hand it to you for the Ape Cult, man. Because the Ape Cult has infected my world of Greyhawk too. It's there now. And I thank you for that.
Well, the Ape Cult, for those who don't know, and I apologize for those who do know and are tired of hearing the story, that came about because I was just rolling up a dungeon. The dice are always right. And I just thought, okay, we want, so I rolled up, okay, there's bandits in this hex. And rolled up rolled the alignment as well, and they were neutral bandits. So okay, do they have a lair? Yes, the bandits have a lair. Okay, let's roll this up, and I rolled up some natural cabins, and then it started to be more worked area, and the dungeon got bigger and bigger the more dice I rolled for it. I think I actually used an online donjon, DONJON, donjon.com. I think I used that generator. Anyway, so there was a kind of a natural section of dungeon, and then there was a secret door. There was a regular door, and then more worked section of dungeon, and then there was a secret door, and yet more work section of dungeon, which was separate. So it was like 3 distinct areas of dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And in the natural caverns, there was I rolled up nothing. They were all empty rooms. So okay, yep, the bandits camp out there. In the work section of dungeon, I just kept rolling up carnivorous apes. I rolled them up in 3 or 4 different rooms. I thought, what the hell are carnivorous apes doing in this dungeon? It's just because it was in a hilly area, and they're prone to appear in hilly areas on the random tables. And in the other work section of the dungeon, I got undead and stuff. And I thought, okay, how do I put this together? So then I went, oh, that's right, I have to roll up the bandits. And, if they've got more than a certain number, then they've got a 5th level fighter. If they've got more than a certain number, they've got an 8th level cleric and so on. Well, they had this cleric and wizard. And I thought a high level cleric and wizard and a bunch of apes. Maybe that's why they're there. There's a cult.
Right.
They worship the apes. And I thought a few years ago, it was just another ape cult.
Now their wicker towers are in every city.
Yeah. And so what are they doing there? They're doing the usual banditry, grabbing people. It said they seize people in the night. And the other work section, it was a secret door. And I thought, okay, so there's your old dungeon, which is stacked full of treasure. And the bandits would like to get into it, but they haven't yet figured out their way in.
Mm-hmm.
So my original idea was that the players would go through and they'd deal with all the bandits, and then they'd explore the rest of the dungeon, and they'd find the secret door, and then they could go and do, fight undead and collect their treasure and all that sort of stuff. That was my original idea. But the players got really caught up with the ape cult guys. They didn't manage. They kept being defeated, and then half of them had run away, and one of them was captured. And this fighter was captured by the leader, the wizard leader, and so of course he uses his charm person on him, the leader, and he says, "My son, you have come to me, my son."
Yes.
So yeah, and that
who is your father, but if not me?
Yeah. Anyway, it was a very so when they fought, he's like, "No, don't fight. He's a good man. He means well." Even though he'd seen it. And that was also where I come up with the rules that if you use blunt weapons, then when you reduce people to 0 hit points, they don't bleed out. And if you use sharp weapons or flame or whatever, then they do bleed out. They add 1 hit point per round. So this then gave clerics a reason to use blunt weapons, because good clerics want to have the person survive so that they can then either punish them after a fair trial or convert them. And the evil clerics want them to survive so that they can enslave them or sacrifice them to their evil god later.
Right on.
Why kill him just in battle when you can, strap him across the stone? Or in case of the ape cult, they had a giant ape statue made of bronze, and it was hollow, and they had a fire underneath.
Oh, nice.
And put you in, and they just boil you alive and then feed you to their ape.
The dreaded brass ape.
And yeah, so the players, and of course there was a moment where they'd killed the carnivorous ape, and so the leader of the cult is, "Oh, you killed my ape. You broke into my property, murdered my servants and my pets. You killed my ape."
That is what grieves me the most.
So
Jane Fossey is beside herself. She raised that ape from the time it was a chimp.
I should have put her in. Didn't think of her. Yeah. Anyway, so then they had a lot of back and forth with like the party escaping and then coming back and defeating the bad guys and the bad guys escaping. There's a lot of back and forth, and they're each riding to the big city nearby, and, and they're taking their charmed fighter with him. He kept failing his saving throws. He wasn't very intelligent. He kept failing his saving throws to recover. And in fact, the fighter was played by Damien. He was the player who contacted me again recently, wanting to game again online because he's in some town
Right
in the
on.
middle of nowhere. Yeah, that was played by him, and I distinctly remember him. You know, like the Doom type character was across the river and riding along, and he's calling out "Papa." So yeah, that was the greatest hack I had, to my mind, just by rolling the dice and seeing what came up, and then trying to make sense of it. And if it didn't, I mean, I don't know if we can say it made sense, but it was funny anyway. It gave the players someone that they could really hate. I think that's an important thing in a game.
Yes.
That, moral ambiguity and all that's a bit thespy. You want some bastard who really deserves to die.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what the players want.
Now I know most of the audience knows the tale of Jane, and I told you about it. The demon who had her alignment forcibly changed and is now trying to live her life as lawful good. But the magic user who gated her in, not knowing what he was going to get, I had big plans for him. I was like, oh, he's gonna Thulsa Doom his way through this. He did, in that he died in about 2 hours. of actual tabletop play. Yeah, the party wasn't having this. You defeated me this time, but soon you will regret. And there's a great scene in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., kind of the ancillary Marvel TV show that began ancillary Marvel TV shows back 5, 6, 7 years ago. The late great Bill Paxton played a bad guy in it, and he was on for most of a season arc, pretending to be a good guy, but it turns out he was a part of Hydra and that sort of thing. And at the end of the episode, after the great horrible shootout, they think they've slain him, and he gets up off the floor and he launches into this thespy dialogue, and it's like, they think they defeated me, but soon I'll rebuild Hydra and I'll come back more powerful. And this blue energy beam strikes him and he just disintegrates. And Clark Gregg, who played the main role on the show, walks into shot and he's got this heavy blaster and he's like, oh, here's where it was. So that's what this thing did. And just walks off, So that was about that was about like my villain was the evil magic user, Temuskar was his name, named after Texas A&M University and South Carolina University, Temuskar. So don't ever say I'm not inspired. He summoned Jane. The party beat him back, rescued her. They went back to the dungeon, went back into his laboratory. He ambushed them, smacked them around for a little while, and then they killed him extra dead. He was dead +1. So, yeah, like I said, in terms of actual clock time, he lived about as long as Thulsa Doom did in Conan the Barbarian. Had about the same amount of screen time. So it
wasn't random, but like there was one campaign. It was actually Rolemaster, where there was an assassin, this ninja assassin that was after a player.
Okay.
And so he came to assassinate him, and the player killed him, and they just left his body there. And then the guy reappears a week or two later, and where he'd been stabbed, there's still the open wound.
Nice.
Still an open wound where he'd been stabbed, but he's still fighting on. So this time he kills him, and this time he cuts off his head and casts it aside. And the assassin Artoon appears again a month later, rather waterlogged because they've been fleeing someone else or whatever through storms and stuff, and Artoon's completely soaked in that, and his flesh is starting to rot, and there's this seam along his neck. And the player just goes crazy and kills the guy, kills the assassin, and then just chops him to bits. Chops it on each joint, each joint, and burns it and everything, and then takes off a ring. And the guy actually had a ring which was juiced to compel him to kill the player Tony, and but at the same time it would always bring him back zombie style, like in the movies where the bits of the zombies come back together.
Oh yeah, it just kind of knits back together like the trolls do in AD&D.
Yeah, knits back together, and it's a bit messy and nasty, but it's like and the player Tony, he told me in one game session, he said it was after he'd slain Artoon for the last time, and he'd actually had this bad dream. His roommate was going, in his sleep he was calling, Artoon, I've killed him. My knowledge, it's the only time that my GMing has given players nightmares.
I've creeped somebody out. I threw a creepypasta. Now this is probably one of the best done alternate reality game creepypastas, and it's the first. So being really old, it works really well. And some of our audience may know it, you may not. The story of Ted the Caver. This is probably my most inspired D&D moment. So there's this story. You can go find it. Google Ted the Caver, and you'll find the entry. And the webpage looks like it was made on Angel Fire or GeoCities. It's just very simple text, white text and a blue background done in a journal style. And it concerns a couple of spelunkers who they go and they find a cave. And the big thing about spelunking is going into places, fitting yourself into caves. And when we talk caves, we're not talking about D&D caves, like a space the size of my office, D&D cave. We're talking like crawl space. And at the end of like 100-foot crawl space that I have to twist my shoulders and put one arm through and then have my ear slightly ground up, scoot through, and then I can get my other arm up. And then I get into a space that's like 5 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet. That kind of cave is what spelunkers do. Why? I don't know, but they do it.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts.
So Ted the Caver is a story of a couple of friends who go and they go to a well-known cave, but they find an unknown passage, and they spend weeks. They spend weeks chiseling out enough room in this passage so they can get through and be the first guys who've been in there. But the narrator goes in and sees like some runes, like some Blair Witch kind of stuff on the wall. And he's like, well, wait, there's no way in or out of this. How could that be there? And yada, yada, so on, etc. And it's a lot better than I'm describing it as.
Yeah.
And the players were just kind of going along in a dungeon, and I was using the DM tables, and it's like natural passage, 90 degrees to the right. So I said, hold up a second. And I bodily lifted the Ted the Caver story and just took it right then. And the only player who physically could go down there, because the dwarf was too broad-shouldered. And the men, they didn't think, let's spend hours, potentially days, with long chisels chipping out this passage so a person could go through. Just the half elf, she removed all of her armor and crawls through. And I was sitting on the other side of the table. I had my laptop there for PDF use. And I just navigated to the Ted the Caver page and just started throwing stuff at her. And because she was off in the cave, when she really got out of line of sight in the tunnel of the party, I said, okay, Stace, come here. And we went off like into the living room, and I'm describing this stuff, and she's like, this is creeping me out. And she's a good friend of mine. I didn't like corner some random person from at a game store. It's really dark. You're all by yourself. What do you do? Nothing like that. So
slimy.
So rather like the protagonist, she gets good and freaked out, comes sprinting back, and I'm like, okay, so you're running back through this narrow notch that's like sometimes as little as a foot wide. Yes. Okay. So I roll like 4 4-sided dice, and I'm like, yeah, you like 12 points of damage. Like you're running over sharp rocks and slamming your head into things. And, I'm just describing it just as best I can out of Ted the Caver the whole way along. And she gets into, she crawls back through the tunnel, and she's like, we need to seal this up right now. so the party's just like grabbing random rocks and dirt and throwing it in there, and they never explored it. I had other plans, you see. Mm-hmm. The story is suspenseful because it ends on a what happens next Twilight Zone shocking cliffhanger moment. I had plans. They did not follow through with them. Later that night, Stacy calls me and she's like, this really like freaked me out. And it's like 1:00 in the morning on Friday night. And her and her husband live across town. And she's like, yeah, this is freaking me out, Bill. Good job. That was probably the best piece of found footage I've ever incorporated in a D&D game. I was quite proud of the terror that I sowed. But anyway, so that's about that's about. And I did link, by the way, a couple of YouTube videos, not just for our viewers, but for you, Kyle. Someone read your thoughts. The ape cult has crept into the real world, into media. Morgan King, who made the fantastic animated rotoscoped fantasy cartoon, The Spine of Night, which he recently got Joe Manganiello to back and get produced. He also did Exordium, which I have also incorporated into AD&D games before. But Mongrel and the Wrath of the Ape King and Prelude to the Wrath of the Ape King deal with adventurers against ape cults.
Mm-hmm.
So right there, if you guys want to see a good ape cult D&D adventure, follow those links up. Go check them out.
Well, the carnivorous apes are pretty nasty enemy, particularly for low-level characters, but even for higher-level ones. It's pretty nasty because he does these 2 and possibly 3 attacks. So he does a claw and a claw thing. And if he succeeds with both of that, he's basically grabbed you and he does rending. So he grabs you and goes, "Arr!"
Yeah, he's basically trying to peel
your face.
Yeah, he's trying to peel you at that juncture. So ape carnivorous, only 5 hit dice. So that's 20 hit points. That's a terror to a party. They appear 2d4 of them. 1d4, 1d8, and if they grab with both hands, they do an additional 1d8. So it's rend, bite, but if they hit with both, they get another. So it's 1-4, 1-4, 1-8, 1-8. Really, it's awful. It's just awful. So use those in your game.
And they don't even have much treasure.
Yeah, it's treasure type C. That's like the worst big treasure type there is. So remember, kids, stick carnivorous apes in haunted caves in your D&D game, and you'll be doing it right. So, well, I think I think we've kind of gotten to that point where I don't believe Servant of Shiloh is going to make it. We will try and reach out to him and see if maybe we can have him on in the future, and we'll alter the video description a little bit so we don't confuse anyone who came looking for that. But we still had fun. I had fun. We always have fun hanging out. I mean, the only not fun part is you and I are a world apart instead of, just across town from each other. But that's kind of the way. But I had fun hanging out with you and all of our lovely guests tonight. And of course,
989.
989. It really is almost the final countdown. And I am stoked. I am really stoked. You guys, of course, if you want to support the show on Patreon, there's the link real quick. But I want to thank our patrons, Digital Discord, Joshua Garlock, Lord Corion, Ricky Maru, Mobius, Kevin Reynolds, Doomsword Deathmaster, Mark Simpson, Damien247, James F. Keck, William Smith, The Dungeon Master, Manny Wall, Mark Corey, Kevin Wood, and Todd Sharp. Thank you all for contributing
that list
to the
is
show.
growing too.
That list is growing, and that's pretty awesome. So thank you all to that wonderful group of folks. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's subscribing to the channel, who's helping grow the channel. We are 11 subscriptions away. We are 11 subscriptions away from, and remember, back in October, we were at like 850. So we have just leaps and bounds. But we're 11 subscriptions away from the Great Underground Online Gaming Convention. It's going to happen. Tomorrow night, we play Gamma World. Monday, I'll come back and regale you all with tales of adventure and such like and other cool things. And Tuesday, AD&D. Next, My Wednesday, Your Thursday, we're going to do some Runequest, right, Kyle?
That's right. And I've just downloaded the PDF of this, the first edition. You apparently can't get PDFs of this is the third edition. The box set is the third edition. I couldn't see PDFs of that anywhere. But yeah, so there's the first edition. There's also a second edition, which has got the same illustration, but it's colorized.
Mm-hmm.
And then or filled in with color. And then this was the third boxed edition where they took this book and they split it up into 3 different books, which was basically the player's book, the magic book, more books. The Game Master book, the Creatures book.
Yes.
Monster Manual. Creatures book. And they also had game aids for the Game Master. And player's notes. Player's notes. With the role player's work list and your tactician's work list.
I think I prefer the single book, but that's just me. But we'll explore that next My Wednesday, Kyle. Wait. Is that right? My Wednesday, Your Thursday next week? Yeah. Okay. My Wednesday, Your Thursday next week. We'll talk all about Runequest and editions and what you get and how it works and all that stuff. Thank you, Joshua Garlock, for being here. Thank you to my audience. Thank you, Kyle, for being here. Everybody have an absolutely stellar rest of your Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow night. Peace to you all, my friends. Be good to each other.